Hello. In this module, we're going to cover exit routes and emergency planning, the entire subpart E of 1910. So it looks a little formidable because there's a whole bunch of them, but they're all pretty small. So we're going to cover them all in one fell swoop. And so let's get started. Subpart E, exit routes and emergency planning. Now you see emergency planning mentioned in a lot of things. So we're going to cover it right now as that appertains to subpart E. So at the beginning of each of these standards, I'm going to show you this because this is what you'll see if you look it up on OSHA. That's what you're going to see at the heading for each of these parts. And this is part number 1910. We know that. Occupational Safety and Health Standards. We know that. And this is subpart 1910, subpart E. So I got subparts of subparts. Okay. Title of exit routes and emergency planning. The standard number is 1910.33. And this is really unusual. I don't think I've ever seen this anywhere in OSHA, but they got it here, so I put it in here. It's called the table of contents. In other words, this subpart 1910.33 is only this table of contents for subpart E. And the GPO source and ECFR, I'm sure that means Electronic Code of Federal Regulations, but I don't know why they put that in there, but they did. So this particular subpart, standard number 1910.33, called table of contents. Like I said, it's odd. I've never seen this before in OSHA or anything. They're going to give you a thing that's only a table of contents. Anyhow, so this is what it says. 1910.33, table of contents. Section lists the sections of paragraphs, headings contained in 1910.34 through 1910.39. Those are the ones we're going to cover. So 1910.34 is coverage and definitions. Every employee is covered. Exit routes are covered. Definitions. Coverage and definitions. 1910.35, compliance with alternative exit route codes. That's a very short one paragraph thing. 1910.36, design and construction requirements for exit routes. You have basic requirements. Number of exit routes must be adequate. Exit discharge. Exit door must be unlocked. Side hinged exit door must be used. The capacity of an exit route must be adequate. An exit route must meet minimum height and width requirements. An outdoor exit route is permitted with restrictions, of course. 1910.37, maintenance, safeguards, and operational features for exit routes. The danger to employees must be minimized. That's what we're here for. Lighting and marking must be adequate and appropriate. A dark exit route wouldn't be very much good, would it? The fire retardant properties of paints and solutions must be maintained. And exit route that's on fire probably wouldn't do much good either. Exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, or alterations. This is a big one. In potential, because somebody might have an exit route messed up or blocked during some kind of alteration, and that can be a problem, a big problem. Employee alarm system must be operable. Yeah, it ain't much good if it's not operable. Emergency action plans, the application, written and oral emergency action plans, the minimum elements of the emergency action plan, employee alarm system, training, and review of emergency action plan. So that's all that. 1910.39 has these major paragraphs: application, written and oral fire prevention plans, minimum elements of a fire prevention plan, and employee information. So there you go. 1910.33 is just a table of contents. Weird, but there it is. So here we go. This is the heading now for 1910, subpart E. This is standard number 1910.34, and it's called coverage and definitions. Again, most of these aren't very long. Every employee is covered. Sections 1910.34 through 1910.39 apply to workplaces in general industry, except mobile workplaces such as vehicles or vessels. So that's pretty all-encompassing. You think about it, vehicles and vessels, you can't really have these kind of standards in them, but imagine if your car had to have an exit route. So this is a pretty all-inclusive section. You usually see a lot more exceptions, if they have any, than that. So exit routes are covered. The rule in section 1910.34 through 1910.39 cover the minimum requirements for exit routes that employers must provide in their workplace so that employees may evacuate the workplace safely during an emergency. Sections 1910.34 through 1910.39 also cover the minimum requirements for emergency action plans and fire prevention plans, and they're very minimum requirements too. 1934C, definitions. There's not that many of them here. Electroluminescent means a light-emitting capacitor. Alternating current excites phosphor atoms when placed between electrically conductive surfaces to produce light. This light source is typically contained inside the device. Electroluminescent. Exit means that portion of an exit route that is generally separated from other areas to provide a protected way of travel to the exit discharge. An example of an exit is a 2-hour fire resistance rating enclosed stairway that leads from the 5th floor of an office building to the outside of the building. So they're taking it, you can see they're taking the exit route as meaning exit, exit access, exit, and exit discharge. So we'll cover that a little bit later. All of them, we'll look at the definitions now of each one. Exit access means that portion of an exit route that leads to an exit. An example of an exit access is a corridor on the 5th floor of an office building that leads to a 2-hour fire-resistant rate-closed stairway, the exit. So the stairway is the exit. The exit access is that portion that's just really basically part of the normal function of the building, a corridor, but it's an access to the exit, and that's important too. Because if you can't access the exit, not much good, is it? Exit discharge means the part of the exit route that leads directly outside or to a street, walkway, refuge area, public way, or open space with access to the outside. An example of an exit discharge is a door at the bottom of a 2-hour fire-resistant rated enclosed stairway that discharges to a place of safety outside the building. So obviously, that's we want to get in an emergency. I'm going to say most emergencies for this type are going to be fires, but there could be others. But you definitely want to get out to a place of safety outside the building, and far away enough of the building, far enough away from the building too, and not in the way of incoming emergency response vehicles. Exit route means a continuous and unobstructed path of exit travel from any point within a workplace to a place of safety, including refuge areas. An exit route consists of 3 parts: the exit access, the exit, and the exit discharge. An exit route includes all vertical and horizontal areas along the route. So it can be an exit route, can be many different stories or floors. High hazard area means an area inside a workplace in which operations include high hazard materials, processes, or contents. Occupant load means the total number of persons that may occupy the workplace or portion of a workplace at any one time. The occupant load of a workplace is calculated by dividing the gross floor area of the workplace or portion of the workplace by the occupant load factor for that particular type of workplace occupancy. Information regarding occupant load is located in NFPA 101/2009 Life Safety Code and IFC 2009 International Fire Code incorporated by reference. They incorporate by reference. That's the law. Now, I looked up that IFC 2009. You can look it up in a PDF file. It's 408 pages. So I didn't read it all. I didn't put it in this presentation either. You're welcome. Refuge area means either a space along an exit route that is protected from the effects of fire by separation from other spaces within the building by a barrier with at least a 1-hour fire resistance rating. So again, that's a space along an exit route that's protected, or a floor with at least 2 spaces separated from each other by smoke resistant partitions in the building, protected throughout by an automatic sprinkler system that complies 1910.159 of this part. So it could be a space along an exit route that's protected from the effects of fire by a separation of other spaces, or a floor with at least 2 spaces separated from each other by smoke-resistant partitions in a building protected throughout by an automatic sprinkler system. So you can see that part of it. If you have an automatic sprinkler system, there's a pretty good chance the fire is not going to spread very fast, and the emergency responders will have time to get there and help. So the biggest thing there is the smoke. So that's what they're saying there. I think they are anyhow. Makes sense to me. Self-luminous means a light source that is illuminated by a self-contained power source, for example, tritium, and that operates independently from external power sources. Batteries are not acceptable self-contained power sources. The light source is typically contained inside the device. Self-luminous, that means. Okay, now we're going to the next one. So here's the title page right out of the OSHA. It's 1910 Subpart E. And this standard number is 1910.35, and it's called Compliance with Alternate Exit Route Codes. This is a one paragraph title. That's it. OSHA will deem an employer demonstrating compliance with the exit route provisions of NFPA 101, Life Safety Code, 2009 edition, or the exit route provisions of the International Fire Code, 2009 edition, to be in compliance with the corresponding requirements in sections 1910.34, 36, 37, and they're incorporated by reference. And then see section 1910.6, and that's a section that tells you that they're allowed to incorporate stuff by reference. So they're incorporated by reference. And again, you can look up these codes and see them online. And you could IFC, the International File Code, with a PDF file. I didn't try to download it and print it, but I could have. But like I said, it's 480 pages. So that's the whole of this chapter. And there's this section, we're going to call it 1910.35. That's all there is to it. It's telling you that if you're in compliance with these, then you don't have to worry about 1910.34, 36, and 37. And here we go. Here's the heading for 1910.36, design and construction requirements for exit routes or routes. I don't know which one's which. So if you notice, I switch between them. Basic requirements. Exit routes must meet the following design and construction requirements. An exit route must be permanent. Each exit route must be a permanent part of the workplace. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, you wouldn't want to have a temporary exit place. I mean, maybe you could under certain circumstances, but if it's not permanent, it can go away pretty quickly, I would think. So that makes a lot of sense. An exit must be separated by fire-resistant materials. Construction materials used to separate an exit from other parts of the workplace must have a 1-hour fire resistance rating if the exit connects 3 or fewer stories, and a 2-hour fire resistance rating if the exit connects 4 or more stories. So there you go, a little difference based on the height of the building. Again, makes a lot of sense there. Openings into an exit must be limited. An exit is permitted to have only those openings necessary to allow access to the exit from occupied areas of the workplace or to the exit discharge. An opening into an exit must be protected by a self-closing fire door that remains closed or automatically closes in an emergency upon the sounding of a fire alarm or employee alarm system. Each fire door, including its frame and hardware, must be listed or approved by nationally recognized testing laboratory. Section 1910.155C3IVA of this part defines listed, and section 1910.7 of this part defines a national recognized testing laboratory. Don't you just love it when OSHA throws you off into not just one standard, but 2 different standards for a definition? So, number of exit routes must be adequate. 2 exit routes. At least 2 exit routes must be available in a workplace to permit prompt evacuation of employees and other building occupants during an emergency, except as allowed in paragraph B3 of this section. The exit routes must be located as far away as practical from each other so that if one exit route is blocked by fire or smoke, employees can evacuate using the second exit route. More than 2 exit routes must be available in a workplace if the number of employees, the size of the building, its occupancy, or the arrangement of the workplace is such that all employees would not be able to evacuate safely during an emergency. See, they don't give you, this is one of those standards that they don't give you the numbers, which most people, when they look up and say, I want to see those numbers, but they want to say, okay, what do I need to do here? And then they're not going to tell you, they'll let you decide. If you're bad, if you don't get it right, too bad. So now a single exit route is permitted where the number of employees, the size of the building, its occupancy, and the arrangement of the workplace is such that all employees will be able to evacuate safely during an emergency. Note to paragraph B of this section: for assistance in determining the number of exit routes necessary for your workplace, consult NFPA 101-2009 Life Safety Code, IFC 2009 International Fire Code, incorporated by reference. Okay, this is one of the reasons why when you have a construction in a building, you have plans and you have plan reviews, and as we discussed in the fire science class, if you've taken it yet or not. And this is why, because this is not something that you're going to look up and say, okay, here's my building and it's going to need this. So you have to have a little bit about know what you're doing and where to go for this information. And anybody that's in construction knows it's going to be pretty well up on this. They're going to know it. They're going to know where to find it. I don't know if this is true, but I heard it was, and I believe that it was, that during that 1911 in the World Trade Center, everybody knows that people generally are going to go out the same way they come in. I mean, they're used to it. Every day they come in this door, they go to work, and they go out that door. So now in an emergency, that's the way they want to go. So while one of the upper floors was on fire and the exit was compromised, there was an exit on the other side of the building that was not compromised yet, but nobody knew it was there. And that's a very possible set of circumstances. Why? Nobody thought that was ever going to happen. Nobody prepared for it. I bet they didn't even have fire drills. So they should know where the exits are. In fact, you ought to make it a habit. And I know not everybody's going to do this, but it's not a bad idea. Just be aware of your surroundings. When you go into a building, look for the exit. If you notice in a movie theater, they're very well lit. Of course, it's dark in there. It's easy to see not much a sign, any kind of a sign. It's not very well lit. But you ought to know not just the place you came in, but you ought to know other exits. So again, this is something, the number of exits is going to be determined in the construction portion of this, in the planning, and that's why they have planning reviews. They want the reviews to be looked at by somebody so that they're doing it right, so they don't have problems with it once it's built. Exit discharge. Each exit discharge must lead directly outside or to a street, walkway, refuge area, public way, or open space with access to the outside. Outside or to a street, so could lead to a street inside, I guess. Anyhow, that's where you want to be, outside, and you want to get away from the building. You don't want to be in the way of emergency responders that are showing up. The street, walkway, refuge area, or public way or open space to which an exit discharge leads must be large enough to accommodate the building occupant that's likely to use the exit route. 1910.36C3, that's just the next chapter. Exit stairs that continue beyond the level on which the exit discharge is located must be interrupted at that level by doors, partitions, or other effective means that clearly indicate the direction of travel leading to the exit discharge. So now there's stairs that are going beyond with the exit discharge, and exit stairs that continue beyond the level at which the exit discharge is located. It must be interrupted at that level by doors, partitions, or other effective means that clearly indicate the direction of travel. So you have to make sure that the direction of travel is clear, because you don't want somebody going the wrong way. Exit doors must be unlocked. This is probably one of the things that originated with the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire in 1911 in New York. The doors were locked, and 146 young ladies perished. Some of them jumped out of the building. Employees must be able to open an exit route door from the inside at all times without keys, tools, or special knowledge. A device such as a panic bar that locks only from the outside is permitted on exit discharge doors. That's a very good idea. The very first OSHA inspection that I was ever involved in was about 1973, so OSHA was pretty new. And it was a small drapery manufacturing company in New Martinsville, West Virginia. And the previous plant manager had just left. He had put deadbolt locks. There was 4 personnel doors, kind of one in each corner of the building, because he was worried about people stealing. So he put just a slide lock on the door, and the OSHA inspector came in and saw those. And I'll be honest, I never thought about it one way or the other before this. And as soon as he did that, I said, yeah, boy, you're right. Because we had the panic bars on them. I had those before the inspector left the building. I had those taken off. And so you can't, the panic bar with a lock, that's probably the most common of the standard doors. I know that the college has them too. When the door closes, it's locked from the outside all the time. That's fine, but you got panic bar on the inside, so you push panic bar and you're out the door. That's probably the most common and probably the best kind of exit, in my opinion. Now, there's devices that, or people can put stuff in that panic bar that don't allow them to open, and that is not right. That's not legal. Exit route doors must be free of any device or alarm that could restrict emergency use of the exit route if the device or alarm fails. So in other words, if they right, it doesn't matter. You can have an alarm on it, and you do, and a lot of places have these. They have, and there's a sign usually that says, "On this is emergency exit only." Alarm will sound if you open this door up. And this is under the fire. But one time in California, me and Dale, she was the salesperson. We were having lunch at a Denny's. And sitting there across from my office, there was two young couples, and we weren't paying much attention to them. They were eating, they were having a good time. We were eating and talking about stuff. And the two guys went up and went back towards the bathroom. Again, we didn't pay attention to them. And all of a sudden, we hear this alarm go off really loud. And then we could tell right off the bat that really wasn't an emergency. Those guys had split out of the emergency exit in the back of the building and got away, left these two young ladies there with no money to pay for this thing, and they were all distraught and everything. And the manager came over, and I was kind of feeling sorry for them because it wasn't their fault. And so I said to them, again, I'll pay the bill. And it was like $27 or something like that. And so, there's another customer there, and he said, "Well, you shouldn't do that because you're just enabling them." I said, "Hey, look, everybody needs a break once in a while, right?" So they thanked me. They were really very appreciative, and I paid the bill. And and hey, my mother was a waitress, so I don't ever forget the waitress. And I even gave a tip for the waitress. Wasn't her fault. And then when I did that, the manager took out his business card, but on about 2 free lunches for me. So he kind of paid me back a little bit on it. So worked out for everybody. But that alarm was loud, and they went out anyhow. And like I said, you can go out. That's not to prevent you from going out, but if it is to make sure that if you do go out, people know about it. So it's a good deterrent to keep people from doing this, but they did it. I think they got away with it. All right. An exit route door may be locked from the inside only in mental, penal, or correctional facilities, and then only if supervisory personnel are continuously on duty and the employer has a plan to remove occupants from the facility during an emergency. And this has got to be difficult. They have a lot of people in correctional facilities, and they're not real cooperative sometimes, or mental hospital. And so but there's always somebody there, and I'm sure they have plans and drills on this. At least I hope they do. The side hinged exit door must be used to connect any room to an exit route. Any room to an exit route. The door that connects any room to an exit route must swing out in the direction of exit travel if the room is designed to be occupied by more than 50 people, or if the room is a high hazard area. In other words, it contains contents that are likely to burn with extreme rapidity or explode. So, to my way of thinking, every door should work. Should exit, and exit travel should open outward. That shouldn't be just to be occupied by more than 50 people. I mean, 30 people is a lot to go out a door that doesn't open outward. But you can get where they're coming from. That doors should open outward. Now, your door in your house doesn't open outward, but there's not that many people. I mean, to be reasonable. Actually, the door in my house doesn't open outward, but the screen door doesn't. Think about the screen door opens inward. The capacity of an exit route must be adequate. Exit routes must support the maximum permitted occupant load for each floor served. The capacity of an exit route may not decrease in the direction of exit route travel to the exit discharge. So that makes sense. And it can get smaller as you go along, because actually as you go along, you may have more people there. And there's your information regarding the occupant load. There's a little video on occupant loads too in the small if you want to look at it. An exit route must meet minimum height and width requirements. The ceiling of an exit route must be at least 7 feet 6 inches high. Any projection from the ceiling must not reach a point less than 6 feet 8 inches from the floor. Okay, 7 feet. That's what? 7 now it's 84. That's 90 inches. Yeah, 7 feet. 7 times 12 is 84. And 6 is 90 inches. Any projection from the ceiling must not reach a point less than 6 feet 8 inches from the floor. An exit access must be at least 28 inches wide at all points. Where there is only one exit access leading to an exit or exit discharge, which width of the exit and exit discharge must be at least equal to the width of the exit access. So there's only one exit access, then the widths of the exit and exit discharge must be at least equal to the width of the exit access. You don't want to have bottlenecks. The width of an exit route must be sufficient to accommodate the maximum permitted occupant load of each floor served by the exit route. Objects that project into the exit route must not reduce the width of the exit route to less than the minimum width requirements for exit routes. So objects that project in the exit route are big warning signs to a safety person. You don't want to see that at all. An outdoor exit route is permitted. Each outdoor exit route must meet the minimum height and width requirements for indoor exit routes and must also meet the following requirements. The outdoor exit route must have guardrails to protect unenclosed sides if a fall hazard exists. The outdoor exit route must be covered if snow or ice is likely to accumulate along the route, unless the employer can demonstrate that any snow or ice accumulation will be removed before it presents a slipping hazard. Yeah, I don't know. If it's outside, I don't know how you can do that. But the outdoor exit route must be reasonably straight and have smooth, solid, substantially level walkways. And the outdoor exit route must not have a dead end that is longer than 20 feet. And now we'll get into 1910 to 37, maintenance, safeguards, and operational features for exit routes. 1910-37A, the danger to employees must be minimized. Yep, we all agree with that. Exit routes must be kept free of explosive or highly flammable furnishings or other decorations. All right. Yeah, let's just plan our explosive there and in this exit route. There's a fire, then we don't have to worry about it. Okay, but highly flammable furnishings or other decorations, that's a big thing here. The exit routes is a functional piece of place, not a decorative place. So exit routes must be arranged so that employees will not have to travel toward the high hazard area unless the path of travel is effectively shielded from the high hazardous area by suitable partitions or other physical barriers. Makes sense. Exit routes must be free and unobstructed. No materials or equipment may be placed either permanently or temporarily within the exit route. The exit access must not go through a room that can be locked, such as a bathroom, to reach an exit or exit discharge, nor may it lead into a dead-end corridor. Stairs or a ramp must be provided where the exit route is not substantially level. So you have stairs, you have a ramp, but so there's some cases, I'm sure, where exit routes, especially maybe in older buildings, they had to kind of jury rig something. So must not go through and it can be locked. Okay, it makes a lot of sense too. Safeguards designed to protect employees during an emergency, for example, sprinkler systems, alarm system, fire doors, exit lighting, must be in proper working order at all times. These types of things, with maybe the exception of sprinkler systems, which usually if you have a sprinkler system, you have an outside agency come in periodically and inspect it. And usually you have your insurance company send somebody in to come on and periodically inspect it too. But the other things must be sometimes get lost in the maintenance shuffle. So as a safety person, you got to keep an eye on that. Lighting and marking must be adequate and appropriate. Each exit route must be adequately lighted so that an employee with normal vision can see along the exit route. And each exit must be clearly visible and marked by a sign reading, guess what? Exit. Now, these people, though, are brilliant. Okay, I'm being facetious. Each exit route door must be free of decorations or signs that obscure the visibility of the exit route door. Sometimes people think, I don't know, they don't think there's a door and exit route, and, don't mess it up by putting posters or signs on it. Now, if the direction of travel to the exit or exit discharge is not immediately apparent, signs must be posted along the exit access, indicating the direction of travel to the nearest exit and exit discharge. Additionally, the line of sight to an exit sign must clearly be visible at all times. If you look around you when you go to almost any building that was built in the last 50 years or so, you can look up and see a sign that points you to the exit. Because the exit signs aren't there for the people that work there as a rule, because they know how to get out or should. It's the people that are visiting that don't have a faintest idea that are going to need those lines. In a lot of buildings, that could be a lot of people. Each doorway, of course, getting back to that, not only that, it could be for like new people, or it could be customers coming in. So Could be employees that haven't been there very long. So that's what I was talking about there. Let's say the exit signs. Each doorway or passage along an exit access, it could be mistaken for an exit. It must be marked not an exit or similar designation, or be identified by a sign indicating its actual use. In other words, a closet. So that's, you'll find this. I kind of interpreted this myself as not an exit. Remember, this is the exit access. This is the entire line from the time place you are in the building, the workstation, until you get out. This is the exit, an exit access. So it's got to be marked. No, that's the exit route. I'm sorry. Exit access is the only part of it that gets you to the exit. So that's usually the part of the inside the building. That's what we're talking about here before you get to the exit. So it must mark not an exit. So it's anywhere along that route of exit, the exit access, anything that looks like an exit, it could be an exit. If it's not an exit, it has to be marked not an exit or similar designation. I thought it was the best thing to do was put a sign that says closet, maintenance room, or something like that to almost any door. I've always, to be honest with you, I've always just said any door should have it, because people won't know if it's exit or not unless it says it on it, right? Each exit sign must be illuminated to a surface value of at least 5-foot candles, 54 lux, by a reliable light source, and be distinctive in color. Self-luminous or electroluminescent signs that have a minimum luminance surface value of at least 0.06 foot lamberts are permitted. Each exit sign must have the word exit in plainly legible letters, not less than 6 inches high, with the principal strokes of the letters in the word exit not less than 3/4 of an inch wide. That's pretty specific. And that's basically, that's the kind of things people want to see in OSHA regulations. The fire retardant properties of paints or solutions must be maintained. Fire retardant paints or solutions must be renewed as often as necessary to maintain their fire retardant properties. Where you find that, I'm sure that's going to be part of the manufacturer's instructions. And we know that manufacturer's instructions are a very important part of OSHA, and you could be cited for not following them. Exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, or alterations. During new constructions, employees must not occupy a workplace if the exit routes required by this subpart are completed and ready for employee use for the portion of workplace they occupy. So that makes a lot of sense. During new construction, you can't start people working in there until the exit routes are done and ready to go. Now, during repairs or alterations, employees must not occupy a workplace unless the exit routes required by this subpart are available and existing fire protections are maintained, or until alternate fire protection is furnished that provides an equivalent level of safety. They write this ambiguously because so many things, everything is different. So alternate fire protection is furnished and provides an equivalent level of safety. That's one that going to be depend on the situation. I mean, if it's a simple, small building, it might be something simple, small. If it's a big, complicated structure, you may not be able to do it at all. So employees must not be exposed to hazards of flammable or explosive substances or equipment used during construction, repairs, or alterations that are beyond the normal permissible conditions of the workplace, or that would impede exiting the workplace. That makes sense. An employee alarm system must be operable. Employers must install and maintain an operable employee alarm system that has a distinctive signal to warn employees of fire or other emergencies, unless employees can promptly see or smell a fire or other hazard in time to provide adequate warning to them. The employee alarm system must comply with 1910.165. There we go. 1910.38, and this is called emergency action plans. So an employer must have an emergency action plan whenever an OSHA standard, and this part, which means 1910, requires one. The requirements of this in this section apply to each such emergency action plan. Now, so what they're saying is this isn't required unless there's an OSHA standard that says you need one. And I know that one standard that is 1910.119, process safety management, does require it. And they'll require you to have this. But I think it's a good idea to have one anyhow, even if you're not required, because this makes a lot of sense. Written and oral emergency action plans. Emergency action plan must be in writing, kept in the workplace, and available to employees for review. However, an employer with 10 or few employees may communicate the plan orally to employees. Now, this gets a little confusing even by OSHA standards sometimes. It says it may communicate the plan orally to employees, but it still should be in writing according to this. They'll say, oh, it doesn't have to be in writing if it's 10 or less, but I think that's wrong. I think it has to be in writing. It says must be in writing. Employer with 10 or fewer employees may communicate the plan orally to employees. Minimum elements of an emergency action plan. The emergency action plan must include, at a minimum, procedures for reporting a fire or other emergency. Don't take it for granted that people know what to do. Your procedures can be calling 911. Your procedures could be pulling a pull station to set off the alarm. In some, it could be word of mouth. It could be an out system if you have an intercom system. So it doesn't matter what it is. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but it has to be in your emergency action plan. Procedures for emergency action evacuation, including type of evacuation and exit route assignments, where you could evacuate differently for one type of emergency than another. So there could be fire emergency with the most common. You could have active shooter emergency. You could have a chemical release, and they might be different for different emergencies. And exit route assignments. Usually you have posted throughout the facility outline floor plans kind of with assignments, and they usually have an alternate, the main exit and a secondary in case the main is blocked, or I mean, not blocked, but blocked by fire or smoke. Procedures to be followed by employees who remain to operate critical plant operations before they evacuate. Now, these aren't the people that are going to stay there until the very end and get burned up in a fire. No, that's not the point of this. The point of this is there are a lot of times when the fire alarm is set off that it's either a false alarm or it's something that's not going to be, engulf the building in a few seconds, especially a sprinkler system. So there might be some critical plant operations that, if shut down, would cause a lot of damage or problems or hazards. And so you have to have an orderly shutdown of something. Then those employees can stay to do that. But they still, up until the point where it's going to become hazardous to them, then they got to get out no matter what. But that's right. That's in there because if every employee just got out, that could be very harmful, maybe even hazardous. So they're allowing to do that. But these people must be trained and know what they're supposed to do and know when to get out too. So procedures to account for all employees after evacuation. In a big company, that could be difficult, but you need to have a procedure to do it. Procedures to be followed by employees performing rescue or medical duties. If you don't have a nursing station on site, you should have some employees that have been trained, and we'll talk about that in actually the next video. But they need to be what they're supposed to be doing. Should they be calling 911? Should they be going someplace? We wanted to have the nurses go to the area where people were assembling outside, because that's where people were going to be. So the name or job title of every employee who may be contacted by employees who need more information about the plan or an explanation of their duties under the plan. Now, OSHA a lot of times puts this in here, the name or job title. And I've never seen a plan or something like that where they put the name of the person, because the person might not be doing that next week. They might still be with the company. They might be doing something else, or they may have moved on. Now you got to rewrite your policy. So if you put the job title of every employee who may be contacted, the plant manager, for instance, everybody knows who the plant manager is, or the safety director, or whatever. So the employees might need more information about the plan or an explanation of their duties under the plan. Employee alarm system. The employer must have and maintain an employee alarm system. The employee alarm system must use a distinctive signal for each purpose and comply with the requirements of 1910.165. Training. An employer must designate and train employees to assist in a safe and orderly evacuation of other employees. And that's usually the supervisors or leads. The alarm goes off, they get things stopped, and they get there and they make sure everybody gets out. There might be some people that can't walk as fast as others. Might be people that have, or maybe they're older people who can't move as fast, or they might have people in a wheelchair or something like that. They can do their job just fine, but have a little bit of problem getting around. Those people might need a little bit of help. Review of emergency action plan. An employer must review the emergency action plan with each employee covered by the plan when the plan is developed or the employee is initially assigned to a job, when the employee's responsibilities under the plan change, and when the plan is changed. Pretty standard stuff there. And now finally, 19.39, fire prevention plans. An employer must have a fire prevention plan when an OSHA standard in this part requires one. The requirements in this section apply to each such fire prevention plan. My humble opinion, I think you should have a fire prevention plan, even if there's not an OSHA standard that requires one. Written and oral fire prevention plans. A fire prevention plan must be in writing, be kept in the workplace, and be made available to employees for review. However, an employer with 10 or fewer employees may communicate the plan orally to employees. Same as the other plan. Minimum elements of a fire prevention plan. A fire prevention plan must include a list of all major fire hazards, proper handling and storage procedures for hazardous materials, potential ignition sources and their control, and the type of fire protection equipment necessary to control each major hazard. Procedures to control accumulations of flammable and combustible waste materials. So now this is the standard stuff. I don't know why you wouldn't have this in any facility, and not even if it's not required by an OSHA standard. To me, this just makes a lot of sense. Procedures for regular maintenance of safeguards installed on heat-producing equipment to prevent the accidental ignition of combustible materials. The name or job title of employees responsible for maintaining equipment to prevent or control sources of ignition or fires, and the name or job title of employees responsible for the control of fuel source hazards. Fuel source hazards. So they know about maybe storing gasoline or something like that on site. That's got to be controlled. You don't want to store those in your building. You want to store them away from the plant. Employee information. Employer must inform employees upon initial assignment to a job of the fire hazards to which they are exposed. The employer must also review with each employee those parts of the fire prevention plan necessary for self-protection. That's all Part E, except for the non-mandatory appendix. And we're going to read the non-mandatory appendix because it's not too long, and I think gives a little bit of insight into some of these standards. Emergency action plan elements. The emergency action plan should address emergencies that the employer may reasonably expect in the workplace. Now, again, this is the appendix, so it's non-mandatory. This is just kind of trying to give you some help. Examples are fire, toxic chemical releases, hurricanes, tornadoes, blizzards, floods, and others. The elements of the emergency action plan presented in paragraph 1910.38c can be supplemented by the following to more effectively achieve employee safety and health in an emergency. The employer should list in detail the procedures to be taken by those employees who have been selected to remain behind to care for essential plant operations until their evacuation becomes absolutely necessary. Essential plant operations may include the monitoring of power plant supplies, water supplies, and other essential services which cannot be shut down for every emergency alarm. Essential plant operations may also include chemical or manufacturing processes which must be shut down in stages or steps where certain employees must be present to ensure that safe shutdown procedures are completed. But again, only until they can stay there until the evacuation becomes necessary. The use of floor plans or workplace maps, which clearly show the emergency escape route, should be included in the emergency action plan. Color coding will aid employees in determining their route assignments. The employer should also develop and explain in detail what rescue and medical first aid duties are to be performed and by whom. All employees are to be told what actions they are to take in these emergency situations that the employer anticipates may occur in the workplace. Emergency evacuation. At the time of an emergency, employees should know what type of evacuation is necessary and what their role is in carrying out the plan. In some cases, where the emergency is very grave, total and immediate evacuation of all employees is necessary. In other emergencies, a partial evacuation of non-essential employees with a delayed evacuation of others may be necessary for continued plant operation. In some cases, only those employees in the immediate area of the fire may be expected to evacuate or move to a safe area, such as when a local application fire suppression system discharge employee alarm is sounded. Employees must be sure that they know what's expected of them in all such emergency possibilities, which have been planned in order to provide assurance of their safety from fire or other emergency. The designation of refuge or safe areas for evacuation should be determined and identified in a plan. In a building divided into fire zones by firewalls, the refuge area may still be within the same building, but in a different zone from where the emergency occurs. Exterior refuge or safe areas may include parking lots, open fields, or streets which are located away from the site of the emergency and which provide sufficient space to accommodate the employees. Employees should be instructed to move away from the exit discharge doors of the building and to avoid congregating close to the building where they may hamper emergency operations. Emergency action plan training, the employer should assure that an adequate number of employees are available at all times during working hours to act as evacuation wardens so that employees can be swiftly moved from the danger location to the safe areas. Generally, one warden for each 20 employees in the workplace should be able to provide adequate guidance and instruction at the time of a fire emergency. The employees selected or who volunteer to serve as wardens should be trained in the complete workplace layout and the various alternative escape routes from the workplace. All wardens and fellow employees should be made aware of handicapped employees who may need extra assistance, such as using the buddy system, and of hazardous areas to be avoided during emergencies. Before leaving, wardens should check rooms and other enclosed spaces in the workplace for employees who may be trapped or otherwise unable to evacuate the area. After the desired degree evacuation is completed, the warden should be able to account for or otherwise verify that all employees are in the safe areas. In buildings with several places of employment, employers are encouraged to coordinate their plans with the other employers in the building. A building-wide or standardized plan for the whole building is acceptable, provided that the employers inform their respective employees of their duties and responsibilities under the plan. The standardized plan need not be kept by each employer in the multi-employer building, provided there is an accessible location within the building where the plan can be reviewed by affected employees. When multi-employer building-wide plans are not feasible, employers should coordinate their plans with other employers within the building to assure that conflicts and confusion are avoided during times of emergencies. In multi-story buildings where more than one employer is on a single floor, it is essential that these employers coordinate their plans with each other to avoid conflicts and confusion. That's a very good idea. Fire prevention housekeeping, this standard calls for the control of accumulations of flammable and combustible waste materials. It is the intent of this standard to assure that hazardous accumulations of combustible waste materials are controlled so that a fast developing fire, rapid spread of toxic smoke, or explosion will not occur. This does not necessarily mean that each room has to be swept each day. Employers and employees should be aware of the hazardous properties of materials in their workplaces and the degree of hazard each poses. Certainly, oil soaked rags have to be treated differently than general paper, trash in office areas. However, large accumulations of waste paper or corrugated boxes, etc., can pose a significant fire hazard. Accumulations of materials which can cause large fires or generate dense smoke that are easily ignited or may start from spontaneous combustion are the types of materials with which this standard is concerned. Such combustible materials may be easily ignited by matches, welder sparks, cigarettes, and similar low-level energy ignition sources. Maintenance of equipment under the fire prevention plan. Certain equipment is often installed in workplaces to control heat sources or detect fuel leaks. An example is a temperature limit switch often found on deep-fat food fryers found in restaurants. There may be similar switches for high-temperature dip tanks or flame failure and flashback arrestor devices on furnaces and similar heat-producing equipment. If these devices are not properly maintained or if they become inoperative, a definite fire hazard exists. Again, employees and supervisors should be aware of the specific type of control devices on equipment involved with combustible materials in the workplace and should make sure through periodic inspection or testing that these controls are operable. Manufacturer's recommendations should be followed to assure proper maintenance procedures. Manufacturer's recommendations, there that is again. Manufacturer recommendations, you might just well consider them as OSHA regulations. And again, these are the types of things, though, they're tested and tested and tested for 10 years, and then people get sloppy in it, and then something happens and it doesn't work. It happens all too often. So Subpart E is finally over. Hope you managed to stay awake through most of it. I'll be able to shout sometimes to kind of wake you up from time to time. Anyhow, that's the entirety of Subpart E. And So it's a pretty important subpart to keep employees safe. So that's it, and be safe.